Hello everyone, welcome to the Global Underwater Explorers YouTube channel. My name is Nico Lurot. If you have been following the channel for a while, you may remember that about 9 to 12 months ago, we reviewed this little thing right here, the second generation Paralenz Vaquita. During my review, I made the point that while I love the ideology of providing immediate data when you're filming in a certain species, which provides data to actual real-life scientists so we can monitor what's going on under the waves, love that. The problem I raised with Paralenz was the fact that any animal which comes about that range to the lens, this wasn't able to focus. So effectively you're sending a mixed message to the consumer, whereby one moment it's, yes, let's get fish data to provide to scientists, as long as it's bigger than that. Kind of a contradictory message. So what Paralenz have done, which I have to commend them for, is they've come up with this. They call it a macro lens. It's not really a lens, it's more of a diopter, but it's supposedly going to overcome the problem of being able to actually focus on smaller fish species, and that's what we're here in Egypt doing this week. So we're on the GUE creative trip. Again, shameless plug, the link to that is above if you want to see the recap of last year's creative trip. It's the sort of thing we do every year. You can go on the GUE.com website, sign up for one of the creative trips if you are part of the community. But one of the things we are covering during the creative trip is seeing how well this macro diopter actually works. You have to commend Paralenz for actually listening to their ambassadors, listening to their reviewers who give them feedback. Instead of getting the hump and just shutting the door on us, they've thought, okay, that's a valid point, let's do something about that. Before we actually jump into the water, one other thing I only noticed on this cruise which I wasn't made aware of. So the initial edition that they sent me was this one, black ring. This is the official second generation Paralenz. I came across this one on the cruise with a green ring. So what Paralenz have done, which I would have loved to have known about beforehand, was they've actually made a wider lens. But that aside, this is what we're here to test, the macro diopter. So let's jump in the water and see how much of a difference this thing actually makes. On this trip, and we've had a chance to test out this macro diopter and the Vaquita now. Well, we had actually two of the Vaquita wide models sent to us, so thank you Paralenz for that. One of them we had just as a standard wide mounted camera, one we had with the macro diopter on it. One thing I need to flag with Paralenz immediately is that one of the models was actually really faulty. So when we were using the snap mode, the videos would record for about 2 to 4 seconds and then cut to black. The recording would continue, but it would just be a black screen. As you can see on the screen now, this is the sort of thing we were dealing with, and it made the actual shoot really, really difficult. Maybe it was a faulty model, maybe there's something wrong with this particular widespread model of Paralenz, and if so, Paralenz, you guys need to check that out, okay? Because that could be a real issue for divers. Focusing on the actual macro diopter. So, it makes a huge difference. Like, we didn't find any macro subjects specifically to focus on, so we turned our attention to some of the coral. Obviously, you know, you can get nice coral details if you're up close and personal. And we tried it both, as you can see on the screen now, we tried it both with the diopter off and then put it on. Now, it definitely makes a difference. The kind of difficulty we had with it is that because by proxy the screen of the Paralenz is relatively small, it was a little bit difficult to see micro details while using the diopter to see, hang on, am I at the right distance, am I in focus or not? My first impression of it is it makes a difference. So again, going back to what Paralenz did, which is listen to their ambassadors, it's a good start. We're going to go on another dive and we're going to look for a few more macro critters. Hopefully we'll find some specific macro subjects to try this diopter on, and we'll continue testing this out. Stay tuned for the next part of the video. the dive, we had a lot more macro subjects to focus on this time. We were lucky enough to find some nudibranchs and some pipefish. So there was a wider selection of things to actually use the macro lens, macro diopter for. The problem I've found now is there's two things, and I'm hoping that maybe with the 3rd generation Vaquita, this is something that Paralenz will consider updating. When you're filming wide, filming on a screen, and I can't stress this enough, the OLED screen, considering its size, I say what I said on the first review, it's super clear. I'm really impressed at how good the screen is considering how small it is. But that's for filming wide subjects. Now, it's great, as I've said at the top of this review, that Paralenz have listened and have brought in a macro diopter to try and be able to focus on a wider selection of marine life, especially the smaller stuff, obviously. The problem we now have is that because we're focusing on something small, we're looking in on the details, the screen's not big enough. It's really, really hard because you've got to be within a very specific range of distance between the lens and the subject for the diopter to work effectively. As you can see from the images and the videos on screen right now, it works, as one of my colleagues said off camera before, it works when it works. Getting it to work is a bit of a different topic. And that comes down to, number one, the size of the screen. And the size of the screen is very, very hard to read details which are in the macro category. And the second thing, which is the difficulty, is that because... So the stabilization is something I'm going to bring up now. When you're using a stabilizer, when you've got the inbuilt stabilizer working within a wide capacity, like I did with the sea lions in the UK last year, the link to that is above, the stabilizer works very well. As long as you've got a relatively steady hand or you're using the pistol grip, then the stabilizer is not a problem. Once again, when we're focusing on macro subjects, and this would apply also with a big camera, but the big cameras like the DSLRs and whatnot have obviously got much better quality stabilizers than you would get within an action cam. So the biggest thing, if the Paralenz if you're going to continue down this route of focusing on macro subjects, which I encourage, you've got to do something about the stabilizer within the camera body, because I like to think I've got very steady hands underwater. Here's an image on screen now of me using it in a wide capacity, for instance. There's no movement. With macro, your hand needs to be so steady as a default, and this stabilizer in the 2nd generation Vaquita with the macro diopter isn't stable enough. Even when you think you're perfectly stable, you're still getting shake. So we're on the right track. We're not there yet. There's still work to be done. Now, do I recommend the Vaquita as a camera for someone who's starting off with an action cam, who's starting off to film underwater? Yes, sure. There's no need to go and splurge thousands and thousands of pounds or dollars if you're not even sure if underwater photography or video is going to be something you enjoy. By all means, start with an action cam. But, if, I stress this again, going down the macro route, we need to have a slightly bigger screen. We don't need to go crazy big, but we need a slightly bigger screen so we can focus more clearly on the macro subjects. And we need a better stabilizer so the images when shooting macro stay crisp. But those are my thoughts on the 2nd generation Vaquita. I continue to be impressed considering how much you're getting under the hood for the little amount of money you're paying in return. It's very, very good value for money. And I do appreciate, as I've said before, that this is a brand that listens to its ambassadors, who takes feedback constructively, and who then uses that feedback to try and make amendments. So, on the right track. Keep working at it, Paralenz. I remain a fan, but I want to see a better stabilizer and a better screen come out as the 3rd generation rolls in. So, if you guys like the content we make on Global Underwater Explorers, please be sure to like the video, share the video with anyone who you think may be interested, hit the subscribe button beneath, and tickle the notification bell so you're notified whenever we've got a new piece of video content coming on the channel. I'll see you guys soon. My name's Nico Lurot. You can find me on Instagram at Nico Lurot. Bye, guys.